We brought together several local organisations, the Malmesbury History Society, the Community Trust, the United Reformed Church, our own society, and we've had input from lots of other areas as well to try and establish this first festival.
So Tony, a lot of people don't know who Thomas Hobbes is. Who is he?
Yeah, you're right. A lot of people don't know about Thomas Hobbes, but I think they should, because he's one of the world's most important political philosophers, comparable in significance to Plato, Aristotle, Rousseau, and he was born here in Malmesbury on the 5th of April 1588, somewhere near where we are standing. He had some really interesting, innovative ideas. He invented the idea of the social contract, that there was a deal between the government and the citizen, that people had to obey the law, and in return the government would look after you and protect your life. These ideas that we take for granted today were invented by Thomas Hobbes, so really important.
Did he have any great works that people could refer to today?
Good question. He wrote lots actually, but he's most famous for a single work called Leviathan, which he published in 1651. And it's Leviathan where he sets out in a definitive way these innovative ideas about political theory. Okay, so he was born, we think, round about where we're standing here in 1588. He was the son of a rather disreputable local clergyman, also called Thomas Hobbes, who we think was a drunk and a gambler, and eventually got involved in a fight and had to run away from the town. So he didn't have the greatest start in life, but he did have a piece of remarkable good fortune. He encountered a fantastic teacher, a man called Robert Latimer, just a few yards away from where we are in the 1590s. He had a great education here. Robert Latimer got him into Oxford, so he went off and studied at Oxford and began his career. He lived a very long life. He died in 1679, and he always identified himself as Thomas Hobbes of Malmesbury on his books. And when he died, in his will, he left much of his estate to his family who were still living in Malmesbury.
So within this trench we've found a pair of very substantial walls as well as evidence of flooring. Effectively what we think we have now is evidence for a nice large structure, possibly of a early post-medieval to medieval date, which would be in fitting with the Hobbes house we're looking for. What we believe we have here is that the grey stones underneath, as with the wall just to your right here, which is also grey stone, represent the foundational courses for the structure's walls. Usually they would have used cheaper, rougher stone for that, in this case a limestone. And on top of that, they have now placed these much nicer and faced to the front, these nice flat faces coming triangular inside the wall. These are nice oolitic limestone blocks. So these are the kind of yellow stone. A lot of the buildings in Malmesbury are made of this. Bath and Cirencester, you see that very common Cotswold yellow kind of stone. So what appears is that in most cases they've demolished and robbed out all of the nice stone down to the foundation courses, and we just have the last little bits of nice stone that would have possibly been showing above ground left sitting on top of that, and that's why we've got this nice yellow course sitting on top of the grey.
Liam, this trench appears a lot bigger with a lot more stuff in. Just give us a rough summary of what we're looking at here.
The main thing we found in this trench is this very large wall that's running along its length. It's quite wide, it's almost a metre wide across, which would have been a fairly substantial building, potentially suggestive of something that has more than one story, as it would have had to support quite a bit of weight. It is quite rough along the face closest to us, because it appears there's been a large robbing event, probably doing the demolition of the buildings that were in this location. They've come along and they've robbed quite a lot of the stone away. So it's possible that on the right hand side trench we are looking at Hobbes's house, or a similar one that may have been backed onto the Horse Fair, and that on this side we've just caught the edge of another property which would have run along the street frontage of St Mary's and also belonged to a similar period.
Well, we've had a really fantastic spread of material over the last couple of days, and we've got everything here on this side that we've washed and picked out some of the prime sort of finds. Really our earliest object at this side of the table is this very nice clay pipe base, which is marked with a local maker's mark on its foot. And at the moment we're working on the proviso that this is potentially early 17th century, so 1620 through to about 1650. Our finds experts will be able to tell us much more about that when it goes back to our office. And as we move across, we've also got parts of medieval floor tiles, which have obviously not come from here. These would be in very elaborate buildings, maybe even the Abbey itself. And the interesting thing about this one particularly is it's got a very good cross-section of how it's fired, so we can see the oxidisation and also the slip running off the top of the glaze here. We've got several metal objects that we've been very lucky enough to find, including this sort of slightly mystery object, which is made out of copper or bronze. Initially we thought that this may be the handle of some sort of spoon or cooking implement, but actually it looks much more like it's a decorative item from a wooden vessel or box that's been used to sort of elaborate and colour that sort of thing there. As we move across, we've got this lovely base of a wine bottle, probably from the sort of 18th century, very thick heavy set glass, and everyone keeps turning it around that way, but actually this is the base and this is the perimeter around the edge where the sediment would settle before you poured your wine. So probably the most decorative item that we found, and this was very early on the Saturday morning, is this really lovely gilt button with the initials BH on the front, which we now believe is part of the Beaufort hunt. And it has on the back, not only does it have the original fitting where it's stitched to the clothing, but it also has the full maker's name and address from the Strand in London. And we understand that this company is actually still in operation in the same premises and produces buttons still very similar to this today.
I think I'd really like to say a big thank you to Cotswold Archaeology, because as a church we've been working alongside them for several months, getting historical documentation together, looking at maps, deciding where the trenches were going to go and how best to preserve our lovely garden for posterity whilst investigating the past.